Hey guys, so in this video I wanted to show you the fastest way to get started with the Pico 1 and 2 from scratch, and also how to compile a blink LED for each board. So let's get started. So on GitHub I have this repository that'll basically walk us through all the steps. So setting up the Pico SDK, and then also installing the Pico tool, which will allow us to flash our binary onto the Pico from the terminal, and we don't have to use the boot select button. So that's really nice. So first let's clone this repo. I'm gonna clone it in my home folder. And then I'll open it in VS Code. Let me open the README and then go to preview mode just so it looks a little better. Let's open a terminal. Okay, so all we really need to do is copy and paste all of these steps. So first let's create a Pico directory in our home folder. And then let's cd into the directory. Look, we need to clone the Pico SDK repo. Cool. And then we'll cd into that repository, initialize the submodules. Cool. Then let's go back to the Pico directory and clone in the Raspberry Pi Pico example projects. So this is nice to have. I'm not going to use it in this tutorial. And then let's update our Linux dependencies. And then let's install the dependencies for the Raspberry Pi Pico. So basically we'll be installing this list, so CMake and the ARM compiler and stuff like that. So I already have it installed, so that's what I'm gonna get. And then I actually already installed this, so it's gonna be quick. Cool. And then we need to export the environment, so configure the environment. So we're gonna export this path to our bash RC file. And then, we'll source in the bash RC file. And then we can check it by doing code bash RC. Let's open this, and then at the bottom we should see this path. Okay, so that looks good. So next thing, let's install the Pico tool. So again, let's update our system, which should be quick. Cool. And then we'll need to install this libusb program to enable the load function. So I already have that installed, so it's relatively quick. Next, inside the Pico folder, let's clone in the Pico tool repository. And then let's cd into that. And then we'll make a build folder. So make dir build, and then cd into build. And then we'll need to export the path of the Pico SDK. So let's do Pico SDK path equals that, and then let's CMake to create our make files or generate them, and then we can run make to build the Pico tool project. Okay, now that the Pico tool is done building, let's list out the content in this folder, and we should have a Pico tool executable, so that looks good. Next thing we need to do is run this command to check if we have the load function. And let's see. Okay, cool. We got the load function, or not the load function, but the load parameter or command which will let us load the UF2 file onto the Raspberry Pi Pico from the terminal. So now we have everything set up to start developing. Let's go back to our Pico project folder. So Raspberry Pi Pico setup, and let's look at the CMake file. This is the baseline CMake list txt file you'll need. So the two things that I want to bring your attention to are this parameter right here. So whenever you want to compile for the Pico 1, so the RP2040, you'll leave this as Pico, and when you want to compile for the Pico 2, we'll set this to Pico tool. Also, when you start creating more advanced projects and you want to utilize some of the other hardware inside the RP2040 or 2350, for example, I2C, you need to include that inside this target link libraries section of the CMake lists file. So the code for this program is very straightforward. We're basically blinking the LED every 200 milliseconds. Pin 25 or GPIO pin 25 on the Pico board is connected to the onboard LED. So we need to initialize that pin and then set it as an output, and then we go inside this while loop and then we start toggling that LED. So now if we want to compile it for the Pico 1, let's make a build folder. Let's make dir build 1, cd into that. So now we'll need to generate the make files for this Pico 1 build. Okay, I think I need to source in the bash rc one more time. Okay, there we go. Okay, so before you build the project, make sure, or before you generate the make files, make sure you source in the bash rc once more time, and then let's build the actual project. Oh, okay, so if this happens, let's go back and then let's remove that build folder and then recreate it. So make dir build 1 and then cd into it and then cmake again. Okay, now make it. Okay, so now we're building our Blink project for the Pico 1. Okay, now that our project is built, let's list out the contents of this folder, and we are interested in this UF2 file. Okay, so if you want to load this using the Pico tool, all we need to do is run this command, so sudo and then the path to the Pico tool executable load, and then we want to force load this binary file and then the name of the binary file inside your build folder. So when you run this, you should get something that looks like this, and this is basically telling us that the load has been successful. Here we go. So now it's blinking. Sometimes you need to do the manual way first, which is unplugging this and then holding down the boot select, connecting it, and then it should come up as a bootable device, and then you need to load on your binary file. And once you do that once, then you can use the Pico command, but I didn't have to do that this time, so maybe that's not true. All right, so next let's try to build it for the Pico 2. So it's very easy. Let's cd. Let's create a file or a folder for the Pico 2, so build 2. Let's cd into that, and then let's create the, I forgot something. So we need to change this to Pico 2, and then cmake to generate the make files. Cool, and then build the project. Cool, now that the project is built, we can use the same command as this. Let's plug in our Pico 2 and run this. And there we go. I switch back to my desk camera. You can see that the Pico 2 is now blinking. So let me run that again. You'll see it turn off. So it's off, it's being loaded, and now it's blinking again. So yeah, that's basically all there is to, getting started with the Pico 1 and 2. Thanks, and let me know if you have any questions, and you can leave them in the comments.